today. As a presenter today, we have Lasse Ziegler from Agile 42 Finland, and he is going to walk you through the topic of leadership in complex environments. So happy to see that many of you are here today. Looking forward to the session with you. A little bit about this Organic Agility webinar series. This is now the third webinar that we are keeping in a series, and we are going to keep still hopefully one webinar for you before summer or before end of summer, and then in fall we're going to kickstart again with more topics. So stay tuned for the dates. They will be published soon. You can get them from social media or meetup groups. So just feel free to follow us for more information on that. Quickly also, before I let Lasse speak, I will let you in on some small practicalities for the webinar. You can chat with us during the whole session, so use the chat for that explicitly. And then if you have any questions, you can put them in the questions and answers box so that we can have a look at them in the end of Lasse's presentation. Just make sure when you're speaking to us in the chat and in the Q&A that you're addressing your messages to all attendees and panelists so that everybody can see your comments and questions. This session will also be recorded, so we are going to share it with you, everyone here in the room, afterwards in an email, and it will also be published on our website. So looking forward for sharings and comments also from you. Also, all the details that will be presented here today will be in the same email. So as soon as we have the recording, we will send you more details on that. Not to take so much time from you, I'm going to give it over to Lasse. He can start his presentation right now, and I will see you back roughly in 40 minutes maybe when the presentation is over for the questions. Enjoy, guys.
Yeah, great. So welcome from my side. I'm Lasse Ziegler. I'm your presenter for today's webinar. And what we're going to talk about is leadership in complex environments. Just a few words about myself. So I've been working with Agile 42 since 2011, and I'm primarily doing a lot of trainings related mostly around Scrum, but also a lot of coaching of different organizations. Anyway, you have my contact details over there. So if you have any questions to me personally, just send me an email or contact me on LinkedIn or anything. I'll be happy to help you out. Anyway, now let's move on to the content. So we're talking about leadership. So in relation to organic agility as well. So one of the first questions that pops at least to my mind when talking about this is that why do we need yet another leadership framework or approach to leadership? I mean, there's plenty of them already out there. And that's something that we thought about. And you know, the reason is we have worked with many different leadership models in the past and over the years. And the experience that we've made with a lot of them is that they're often quite static. They're focused on styles of leadership or on specific perspectives. And these perspectives are often more just connected to the kind of like state the organization is in at a particular kind of like situation in there. What we want from leadership is more like something that is going in the direction of complexity, and how to add Cynefin and the complexity thinking to also the approach that you take in leadership itself. Another problem that we found is that a lot of the leadership models that exist tend to describe a set of characteristics considered to be an ideal profile of a leader, that we have kind of like this idealized version of such a leader. So we wanted to have a slightly different approach to this thing, especially in relation to the complexity and the Cynefin, and that's why we have kind of like a bit of our own mix of how we deal with leadership that I want to explain in this webinar, like the different approaches we have there, the different dimensions and so on, and how does this kind of like fit in. Future webinars will go into more details about some of these things, like how to tie this in with complexity and Cynefin and so on is a topic for one of the webinars that will come either before summer or after summer. All this work that we are talking about here is based on our experiences from roughly around the last 10 to 15 years working with multiple different organizations and the leaders in those organizations. So to give a little bit of context to what I'm going to kind of present in a moment is that most of the leadership that is described and documented these days refers to leader as a person rather than leadership as a capability. This is where we see it slightly different. We see that everyone in an organization can be a leader and also is a leader in the right circumstances and the right situation. So it's not that you have a person who is kind of like nominated that you are the leader and that's it, but everyone is a leader at certain times in the organization in there. So it's not limited to a few individuals, but it's something that needs to be universal to all the individuals that we have in an organization. And hence we need this kind of capability in everyone to be a leader or to show leadership. The other thing that we kind of like sometimes have issues with is that a lot of the other leadership theories out there describe a good leader as having some characteristics that you're born with. That's not something that we really believe in. I mean, leadership is something we believe is a learned capability. You can learn to be a good leader if you take the time to learn how to be one. It's not something that if you're not born with it, you do not have it, but you can acquire it through practice. We also believe that there is no single best style of leadership. So there's not one right way of leading that would suit a particular situations, because the style that you need to adopt depends on the person or the group that you're trying to influence, as well as the task, the job, or the function that they're trying to accomplish at that point. So and there's a few more things that I'm also going to go into that also influence kind of like the different leadership behaviors that are important, and which kind of factors influence these is something that we go into the future webinars as well. The problem with a lot of other theories out there that we found is that they're based on certain assumptions, and a lot of these assumptions are quite old and maybe have been true back when we were still talking about industrialization. But when we go to the modern kind of like knowledge era and the knowledge work, then a lot of, especially the older leadership theories out there, don't really seem to fit the modern context anymore. They are more suited to assembly line things and this kind of manual labor environments, while a lot of the work these days is more on the knowledge side of things. So we need kind of like a different style of leadership because of that. And especially the knowledge era that we're now in has its own kind of like peculiarities because we have extremely high volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in our environment that we operate in. It's very difficult to predict the future or even know how things will react in our current situation that we have. Partially this is due to globalization as well as the digitalization of things. Everything is networked, everything is connected, so any kind of change anywhere can have effects on other parts somewhere else, and that makes the whole system that we live in extremely difficult to manage and predict and so on. And for that, again, we need a different style of leadership. And that's what I want to talk about, like what kind of style of leadership do we need there and what is important in there. A couple of things that we do need here that we know is we require from all our people innovative thinking. We need experimentation and quick learning to adapt to these constantly changing circumstances that we are in. If the organization overall is not capable of doing that, they will not be able to survive in the high volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity that we actually are living in at the moment, or been living in the last decade or so. So that, of course, has then reflections or implications on the leadership and how we approach leadership overall in there. One thing that I also want to point out is that emotional intelligence is something that affects or is important when we talk about leadership as well. This is something that especially Daniel Goleman has been writing about, is that there is a connection between your own emotional state that is influencing the actions that you do. And of course, those actions then cause an impact in the organization that you have. So if you are extremely angry, you will have a different action that you do than versus you are extremely calm in a certain situation. And because you have a different action based on your emotion, you will get a different impact in your organization. Now, these can of course be positive or negative ways that you kind of get an impact in that organization. So one of the things that a leader needs to be aware of here is what kind of emotion do I have, and how are these emotions at the moment influencing the actions that I'm taking, and is this action that I'm doing causing the right impact that I want to have in my organization? And there it becomes important that you learn to have an emotional control of yourself, that you have the right set of emotions in the right appropriate moment in time, so that your actions are appropriate to the impact that you want to get. Another term that we have, that we use in relation with leadership, is what we call motivational depth. So this is if as a leader we act in a way that does not match the expectations of the people that we are leading and working with, there will be inevitably an amount of frustration and dissatisfaction in those people. So, for example, if the culture of the organization we're in is strongly hierarchical, and you're then adopting a leadership behavior or style that is, let's say, coaching, for example, then that can actually cause confusion, frustration, dissatisfaction in the people that you're interacting with, because they're not expecting that kind of behavior from the leader, because it's mismatching their expectation in how you actually are now behaving in there. And that can lead to what we call motivational depth, because the people don't feel motivated, don't feel engaged, and they're not really necessarily performing that well because of this dissatisfaction in there. So something that always to keep in mind. Now, in organic agility, in our leadership framework that we have, there's kind of three important dimensions or aspects that you need to be aware of when working with this. The first one is what we call the identity of the leader himself. So this is, every person can have multiple different identities. You have the identity you take on when you're at home with your family, and you have a slightly different identity you take on when you are at work. Every identity you have is associated with different behaviors, different behavior patterns, and ways you react in different situations. You don't necessarily react the same way with your family as you would react with someone at work. So there it is especially important to become aware of your own identity that you have when you are in a leadership position or acting as a leader at any given point in time. And also to kind of like know what behaviors you have attached with that identity that you have in that situation. And the important thing is you can have multiple different behaviors, and as a good leader, you also need to learn to have multiple different behaviors. For example, something that we see at clients sometimes is that there is a leader who has one single behavior pattern, and that's all he has. And then when there's a different situation that actually would require a completely different behavior pattern, he doesn't have anything to use, and he just falls back on the same behavioral pattern over and over, which then causes a lot of this motivational depth, because it's the wrong behavior pattern to use in that particular situation. And it would be better if you could adjust with a different behavioral pattern. But as I said, this is also something that we can learn over time, to have these multiple different behavioral patterns to apply. The other thing that we need to keep in mind, the other aspect when we talk about leadership, is the organization culture has a big impact on this as well. So depending on what kind of culture you have, you need to, of course, adjust your behavior pattern. This is the example I made before with, if you have a very hierarchical organization and you come with a behavior pattern that matches a different organizational culture, you're going to create a lot of confusion in there. So matching these up is also important. And the last aspect is that the situation that you're in as a leader also affects the behavior that you need to exhibit as a leader. So depending on what kind of situation you are having now at hand, what is the current situation that where you need to interact with people at this given moment in time, what kind of leadership behavior is the most appropriate in this context and situation. And there again, different behaviors are appropriate in different moments in time. For example, if you have a big emergency, you might have a different behavioral pattern as the leader versus we're trying to resolve some interpersonal issues. Those have different behaviors attached to them. So based on all of this, what we have come up with over the years is we have 6 different types of behavioral patterns that leadership kind of like exhibits. And to more clearly explain these, with these 6 behavioral patterns, we also have 7 dimensions for each of these patterns that they kind of work with. So it's kind of like 7 different views or dimensions that are related to each of these behavioral patterns that we have. So the first thing that you, with any kind of leadership behavior, is you have to understand what is the leader's perspective in this particular situation. So leader's perspective, what we mean with this is how does the leader see himself in this situation? How does the leader see how things should be done, how results should be delivered, how responsibilities are shared, how expectations are set? How is the leader kind of like seeing this situation himself? The second thing is the leader's own attitude. So this is what kind of attitude the leader takes towards this situation. When he's interacting with the group, what is his own role in that group, and how does his attitude affect that? Then on the follower side, and please keep in mind the words leaders and followers here are not necessarily referring to any fixed people, because as I mentioned earlier, anyone can be a leader in the right situation. Which means anyone can be in this leader's view, and then other people are in the follower's view. It's not a static thing. This keeps shifting around depending on situations. So keep that in mind, of course, there. But on the follower side, we have 4 kind of dimensions that we see as important. The first one is what we call the management of work. This is how work should be managed and organized within that group. So how are we organizing the things when we work together? The second one is motivational drive. So this is about how the group is motivated, how they engage with the work or don't engage with the work. And if this is what I mentioned earlier also with the motivational depth, if this motivational drive and the leadership behavior are inconsistent, then that can lead to negative outcomes, disengagement, motivational depth, and so on. We also have what we call operational behavior. So this is how expected behaviors are affected by the leader's attitude. So how is it when the leader behaves in this certain way? How does that affect the team or the group of people that we're working with, and what kind of behavior they are exhibiting, the followers, under this leadership behavior? Then the last is group unity. Actually, I skipped the leaders. We'll get back to that. So group unity is how the group holds together. How do we create a coherent, kind of like a group that feels as a group together, and how they stick together and don't fall apart as a group or as a team or something like that. Also, leadership behavior affects that dimension as well. So we need to keep that in mind. Now, in the middle, we have what we call the leader's image. This is a combination out of both the leader's view and the follower's view. And what's important when we talk about leadership is that we have what we call a coherent leadership image, which means that the leader's view and the follower's view kind of match up to each other. Now, if those are mismatching, we could say we have an incoherent leader's view, leader's image, which means that the leader is kind of trying to behave in a way that is not matching up with how the team or the group of people are expecting him behave or want him to behave. And when we get that, that's where we get the friction and problems and so on. So if everything is matching up nicely, usually things are running very smoothly. But if these two things don't match in the leader's image, then that can cause issues and problems. As I said, we have in total 6 leadership behaviors identified that we will go through next. So we have what we call directing, demanding, conducting, envisioning, coaching, and catalyzing behaviors for leadership. So what do we mean by each of these? So a directing leader is, I am the expert. Otherwise, I wouldn't be the leader. This is why I'm in charge of defining what to do and how to do things. I am responsible and I will be held accountable by the organization, and I need to ensure all work output meets my expectations. And I use my experience to tell my team what to do and how to do it. And I need regular and detailed reporting of that progress. The best way, so in my image as a directing leader, is to get things done is to do it myself. But I don't have enough time to do everything myself, and I also need to spend time on reviewing and improving and directing the other people. So I have to, in a sense, kind of like delegate some of that work. My attitude as a leader, directing leader, is that I expect everyone to respect my experience and comply with my requests. I don't want discussions or suggestions. I want things done the way I want because I know what is right and I am in charge. That's the attitude that the leader is exhibiting when he's a directing behavior. Now, if we switch to the follower side, how is the management of work? So from the group's perspective, our work is defined and assigned by our leader to each of us. We are required to provide regular progress reports to the leader. And this is so that he can maintain the control and ensure the right results. So this is how we manage the work. So what's the operative behavior? So what's the kind of like behavior that the group then exhibits? So we as a team or a group of people, we tend to comply with our leader's direction and assignments. In this way, our leader expects work to be done, and it's the safest approach. Sometimes this can feel very frustrating and demoralizing, but it is also comfortable because we, as the people, the group of people, don't need to worry about doing what we need to worry about doing things, because we just need to do as we have been asked to do things. And the leader that we have will take care of all the other things in there. Now, on the motivational side, when we talk about directing, then our leader is an expert, and it's motivating to learn from him. I mean, he knows he's the expert, and we are trying to learn as much as we can from him. And we are given clear directions and are asked to simply comply and produce results. Non-compliance isn't really an option. Failure as well is also not really considered an option. Now, how does a group stay together in that kind of leadership? Well, we stay together because of the direct leadership of our leader and the absolute clarity about what the consequences would be if we didn't or if we failed. And the leader's image, in this sense, if those two things match up, is the leader is the authority here. So he has absolute authority and he's directing people in how to do things. Now, please keep in mind, none of these behaviors are inherently bad or good. It's more of a question, do you have the right behavior in the right situation? So even directing leadership is not necessarily a bad thing. It is the right way to do things in certain situations and certain contexts. So let's move on to another leadership behavior. We have the behavior, what we call demanding. This is like, you could summarize it as a sentence, I push for performance. From the leader's perspective, this is about that my approach is still likely to be the best, but I don't really care that much how people get things done as long as my standards are met. I have very high expectations of people, but I lead by example, and high standards are a source of pride for me. I am very competitive, and I have a reputation to defend in my organization, so I'm not going to compromise on anything. I want people to work hard and lots of hours, and I want to make sure that we remain the best group in the organization because results are what counts. Now, the leader's attitude in this case is, I expect everyone to work with me to meet my standards, and if they fail, then they don't deserve to be part of the group that I'm leading. I will demonstrate to everyone how to achieve success in our workplace, and they either get it or they can get out. Now, how does this sound from the kind of like follower's side? So management of work, how is that taken care of? So the work is defined by us, by the people who are following, but of course it's pretty much following the leader's suggestions. What is most important is that we achieve the results and meet those expectations. And our leader doesn't really care how we get things done as long as the results are produced. The behavior that we're exhibiting is that we tend to focus on meeting our targets. Our leader is very demanding and sets a very high bar for us. And this constant push for more is somewhat motivating in the short term, but it can also be very stressful in the long term. So on a motivational drive side, we are a winning team. We are about winning. And it's motivating and rewarding to be part of that winning team. And if we are in favor with our leader, then, well, you get rewarded accordingly through either individual incentives or other ways. And group unity, why do we stay together? Well, we stay together because we feel compelled to achieve these targets as a group. Our leader is a great motivator, sets tough but achievable targets, and helps us solve our issues and get things done. So a third way how a leader can behave is what we call conducting leadership. So this is about coordinating the work of my team. So as a conducting leader, I'm coordinating how my team works, how my people work. I don't tell people how to do the things, but I need to make sure that their work is carefully coordinated so that we get results that we want. And as a conducting leader, I encourage people to work with each other and ensure everyone can utilize their skills. And I prefer any collaboration to be organized through me rather than being spontaneous. So that I can stay in control and coordinate all these efforts. What is my attitude as a conducting leader? Well, I encourage people to work together while meeting their targets, but I dislike having individuals work alone because sharing knowledge and experience with each other is important for us. I believe working together improves the quality of the work and makes our team less dependent on specific individuals. That's because I'm conducting. Now, on the follower side, how is the work managed? Well, a team group discusses what to do together, and the leader takes care of all the coordination of these activities and ensuring that all our efforts add up to something valuable. What's the behavior like on the follower side? Well, the leader makes sure that we cooperate when we need to, but the responsibility to achieve individual targets resides with us, with the team, and isn't really necessarily shared with all the different people in there. When difficult situations arise, we can ask each other for some help, but it's hard to offer help because everyone is focusing on their own things, and the leader is the one that is coordinating the help with each other. So everything flows kind of through the leader in this behavior model. Now, how are we motivated here? We are allowed to organize our own work the way we want, and knowing we can get help from competent colleagues is very motivational. So you have kind of like the autonomy already to kind of like organize your own work, and that is motivating you. How does a group stay together in conducting leadership behavior? Well, we have clarity on roles within our team, and we have a common team identity, and we work together, and we are collaborating on things, and that's how we stay together as a team. And the leader's image here is he's an organizer. If we move to the next one, this is what we call the envisioning behavior. This is about encouraging people to achieve goals. So as an envisioning leader, I strive for a better future by depicting a challenging but attractive picture of where we could be in that future. I encourage the collaboration where I can, and I believe that that engagement and inspiration and having an attractive vision will lead to better results and better collaboration of things. My approach is to introduce and reinforce, renew kind of like these kind of visions or the goal that we have to grow kind of like a shared sense of responsibility in going towards that goal. So what's my attitude? So I want to collaborate with my team. I want to support my team, and I want to encourage them to achieve great results. And we can do this together. That's my attitude in there. I feel part of that team, and I consider everyone's contribution to be valuable to us achieving that goal. I trust the ability of my team to solve different conflicts and problems without my help, and I focus more on creating that inspiration, energy, and sense of possibility instead of like coordinating on the other styles of leadership. So I'm giving kind of like the goal setting in that sense. So how do we manage the work? The team develops a strong identity and they trust each other. We discuss and agree with each other in how to approach work, and everyone contributes based on their own pace and talent towards our common goal. How is the team behaving? Well, we tend to collaborate to achieve those results. This is more effective and rewarding and fun for us. And we share the risk as much as we share the responsibility. And this is what strengthens the team's kind of like collaboration and working together. We don't leave our team members behind. We are in this together, and we're trying to accomplish this together. How's the team staying motivated in this? Well, we have this shared responsibility and a shared belonging towards our goal. And we're being part of the team that is trying to achieve that goal. And that's giving us the motivational drive to move forward. How do we stay together as a group, as a team in this case? Well, that's through the collaboration and that inspiring purpose goal that we have. And we're trying to achieve that. That's binding us together in there. And the leader's image in this kind of behavior is that he's an enabler. He's giving us the goal, setting the direction in which we are going. Now, the next one is that we see is leadership behavior is a coaching behavior. So in a coaching behavior, the leader is helping the individuals to develop and become better assets and better themselves and be a better part of the team that they're in there. But he's also continuously challenging and supporting the team to become more effective. As a coaching leader, I see my roles as helping the team to avoid stagnation and complacency. So I will constantly ask them to kind of like experiment, try out new things, and try to improve themselves. It's also important here that the team that I'm working with accepts me as a coach, or I can't really do much my job with them. So I kind of like need to earn their trust and respect. And they also need to earn my trust and my respect. And when we have that, we can work together. What's the leader's attitude like? Well, I challenge people to do work without my help. I coach them to get out of their comfort zone and to try and experiment with new things. My intention here is to create more autonomy and purpose for everyone. And sometimes I can only do this in small scale. Sometimes it's difficult for me to coach large organizations, large groups of people. This is more focused now on smaller groups. So how does it on the follower side? How is the work managed? Well, work is managed in a very self-directing way. We know when we can do things on our own and when we need to collaborate. We discuss our goals together, we self-organize, we create meaningful collaboration towards the common goals and so on. So this is a very self-organizing behavior that we have in there. On the team's behavior side, well, the team's trust and maturity are so high that we enjoy a high level of autonomy, both within the team and also as a team within our organization. And we share the responsibility and focus on doing what is needed to be effective. We trust each other to pick up work we feel comfortable with, and mistakes inevitably will happen from time to time, but we try to learn from them. So what keeps us motivated? Well, we are proud to be part of a group, a tribe, and we share profound trust in each other, and we challenge ourselves to leverage all of our potential, and we kind of like motivate each other through that. How do we stay together as a group? Group unity? Well, we are aware of our potential and we are able to master our own destiny. So the autonomy part is there, what keeps us together. And the leader's image that we have, the leader is a servant to the team. So this is when we talk about servant leadership. That's a coaching behavior mostly. Last one, we can talk about catalyzing leadership behavior. So this is about I amplify the success of my team. And I make sure that they are both well connected and recognized in my organization. And my primary purpose is to ensure that the team can interface better with the rest of that organization and can contribute to the strategic development of our organization. My ability as a catalyzing leader is to present the overall picture of what the organization is aiming to achieve, and give feedback and help the team move in that direction. The leader's attitude in this case is I'm praising my team for their achievements while simultaneously challenging them to get even better. And I emphasize the possible synergies and integrations with other parts of the organization and the larger whole. Well, how do we manage the work? Most of the work is again self-governed, and we share a purpose and decide together what our team goals should be. So difference from the previous one with the coaching, in this case, the team is already setting their own goals and kind of like their own direction a little bit. So we collaborate to achieve our goals in doing whatever is necessary to maximize the delivery of value for our clients and customers and so on. So what kind of behavior does the team exhibit? Well, we are open-minded and curious about new trends in the market, new customer needs. We challenge our thinking and consciously focus on delivering more value to our clients. And we are continuously learning, and we love to experiment with new approaches to how we do things and how we work together. What keeps us motivated? Well, we're very conscious of the contribution our team makes to our clients and customers, and are proud of being able to serve them and create value for them. What keeps us together as a group is that we are proactively looking for new challenges and trust one another, so we know we will succeed together as a team. And here, in this case, the leader's image is he's a challenger and an amplifier. So those are the 6 different leadership behaviors that we have. But to be a good and effective leader is that you need to master these all, because all of these are needed in different situations and different points in time, in different organization cultures. So it's not like you can go and be good at one of them, and then with that you can tackle any situation that comes in front of you. You need to have a good repertoire of these different behaviors and know when to apply the different behavior in different situations. Now, to help you with that, we do have also what we call a leadership assessment. This is how we can figure out what kind of leadership behavior an existing group is exhibiting. What we do here is we do a 360-degree assessment. So it's both the leader and the followers that are being asked here, and we get a nice profile of how the leader sees himself and how the followers see him, and then we can start discussions around it. Do these match up, and in what direction to develop, and so on. Well, and also what we're going to do in future webinars is to go a little bit more deeper in this and cover how, for example, in different cultures, different kind of leadership behaviors tend to be more dominant. Excuse me. Also, different organizational archetypes, how organizations are kind of like set up, also affect how leadership behavior fits that, doesn't fit. This also relates again to that motivational depth. So if you have an organization archetype and your leadership behavior does not match that, you are creating motivational depth. And also with a situation, we're going to map that in a future webinar to take a Kinefin and, for example, to see if you're in a complex or a complicated situation, what kind of leadership behaviors would be appropriate for these different situations. But that's all for future webinars that we're going to cover in the next coming months. So, if you want to know more, well, Fia?
Yes. So as Lasse mentioned, there will be more webinars coming up, and these webinars only touch the topics a little bit. So to get more in depth in what we are talking about, deeper learnings, you can also attend our Organic Agility Foundation training that also at the moment is validated to give you also the CAL certification, the Certified Agile Leadership one. So we strongly recommend you to also take the training with us if this is something you would like to learn more about. We have 2 upcoming trainings now, one in the end of June and then one in August. And with the discount code from this webinar, OA webinar, you get the training to a price of 1,600 euros plus VAT. So I strongly recommend you to use the discount code as well and learn more together with us. Of course, you can also come to the webinars, but the trainings are a little bit different and very interesting. These links and everything will also be in the email, so you don't need to type down everything right now. But just as a FYI for you guys. There's also the Organic Agility book that's been written that you can read more about. Also Organic Agility and this book will also have a link in the email. So don't worry, it's coming. I think it's also now a good time to take some questions. We have a few ones already in the Q&A. So let's start with them, and everyone can now write down their questions, or if you have any comments, feel free also to use the chat for that. Are you ready, Lasse, for some questions?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Dave Snowden is quite dismissive of EQ. How do you reconcile Knevin and his work and concepts like EQ?
EQ as in calculating emotional intelligence quotient, or how it's pronounced.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm also not a fan of that. But the parts that we kind of take from it is that your emotional state does affect your actions, and those actions do create an impact. That's kind of like the part from emotional intelligence that we find is helpful and valid and works. You have to be, in a sense, emotionally intelligent to understand what your own emotional state is, or what the appropriate emotional state in this situation is, so that you take the right kind of actions and through that create the right kind of impact. But going into assessing emotional intelligence in people with some assessment things, no, not really. I wouldn't do that.
Okay. Then there's another question. It seems to me that the first 2 patterns are boss-like and can only work for a weak team. The other 4 actually work much better in 99% of the situations. Is this correct?
Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what organization you're in and what's the organizational culture. I mean, if you're in a very agile organization, then probably yes. But let's say if you are in a very traditional hierarchical organizations, then a coaching leadership behavior is probably not going to be very effective or working, and it might just confuse people completely, and you wouldn't get anything done because people are not used to it. So it's not like inherently certain behaviors are the right ones. It depends on the culture and the context and all those things that need to be in there. Yeah, and also the type of work they do and so on. So all these go into it. Of course, if you are in certain industries, certain behaviors probably are more dominant or more common than others. Let's say in the typical IT software development industry, yeah, the later ones tend to be more common than the first ones. But then if you go to other industries, it might be completely different again. If you want to get this even more complicated, you need also to factor in what kind of situation the company is in, or what kind of life cycle phase we're in with our product, because that might also have effects in what kind of organization culture makes sense for our product in this particular moment in time. Let's say you have a product that is about at the end of its life cycle, your sales is falling, your revenue is going down, and your margin is going down, and so on. And then having like extremely self-organizing agile teams might not be the best possible approach in there to maintain that kind of product, for example. Anyway, it's a bigger topic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then here's a question about, while globalization and digitalization rise up, why autocratic leaders have been appearing.
Autocratic or autocratic?
It's spelled autocratic.
Yeah.
Autocratic.
Kind of like this,
Okay.
I'm the boss kind of leader, I guess. I'm not sure what the question is referring to, in organizations or in countries. Because my interpretation of the question is that it's more like why they're appearing in different countries over the world at the moment. if that's the case, personally, I think that's because it's a counter reaction to the globalization and digitalization and people trying to not, or wanting not the world to change too much too fast. And then someone promising them, I can make it all go back to what it was before. And then them, voting for those people. I don't know if I understood the question right.
Maybe this person can contact us if we misunderstood him or her somehow. Then here's also a question, I think a little bit to the leadership assessment related, but how to discover what you don't know and or doing wrong as a leader?
Feedback, both from the people that are following you, but also from someone else, a coach, for example, to go through the situations, discuss them. I mean, one tool is to use a leadership assessment tool and see how you see yourself and how the team sees you, and see if those two things match up. Usually they don't. Then kind of like be self-aware and self-reflect to see kind of where your strengths are and your weaknesses are, and then start working on those.
Thank you. For now, there are no more questions. Maybe somebody still wants to ask something. You can do that still. We have a few minutes left, or if you have any comments on the topic given also today, you can also use the chat. So some more questions are dropping in at the moment. Let's take one. How to apply different behavior patterns when the situation changes and the people used to the way it was before?
How to apply different behavior patterns when the situation changes? I don't understand the question quite. So my interpretation of the question is how to know what is the right behavior pattern in that situation, and probably also if you want to change the behavior of the team that you're interacting with, I guess. So this is something that we're actually going to go in more in one of the future webinars when we go in the Kinefin, for example, part, the principle number 2. So to understand Kinefin, for example, and then map different behavioral patterns to different situations in that is one that helps in there. The other one is that actually in principle 1 is with the cultural awareness of what kind of organization culture you have, to map the behavioral patterns to that, as well as the organizational archetypes, which is probably the next webinar actually that we talk about. So that's something we get into more in a future webinar.
Okay. Then here is a longer one. Hi Lasse, you said that there is no best leadership style at all, and I fully agree with you. On the other hand, don't you think that considering the VUCA world we're entering more and more, the directive style originated on a command and control top-down approach should be more and more abandoned?
Yeah, I believe so as well. I mean, for most of these very uncertainty and so on, command and control tends to not work that well. So I agree in that sense, but I don't think it will be totally 100% abandoned. There will always be some parts where it actually makes sense to be also more top down and so on. But generally in product development, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Then there's a question also if this today's topic, webinar topic, appears in the book that was mentioned. And a lot of what's been spoken about here today is also in the book. So for sure you can read more in the Organic Agility book about this. Then there's a question, which leadership patterns do you see applicable in the current situation of forced remote work in many organizations?
So depends again on what kind of work that team is actually doing. Because that cultural and that context and that situation influences what behavioral pattern is actually the best. I mean, if you have a team that is, and the situation and the work they do is something where it actually makes sense to use a directive style, then even in remote working, you would use a directive leadership style or behavior. But if they do a different kind of work or different kind of situation, then a coaching behavior might be more appropriate. I don't know what is the right behavior for just saying remote work. We would have to look at the organization culture, the situation, the work they do, and all that stuff. And then we can talk about, okay, what would be the appropriate behavior in that particular situation.
Okay. I think this last question we have is more of a comment maybe to the question we had before. So I think we can say that we answered it already. It's about self-organizing leadership, but I think that was just a comment on the topic. So if you don't have any other questions, guys, you can feel free to contact me or Lasse directly, and we can also help you to get answers to more questions that you have. Otherwise, it was really, really nice to have so many of you joining us today. We are looking forward to the next webinars that we will post as soon as we can, so stay tuned for that. Also, if you want to attend the Organic Agility training, you can sign up already from the website. The trainings are listed there, so just pick the date that suits you and come and join us and learn even more. Also, if you have any questions or are interested in any in-house sessions or a call with Lasse about something, just let us know and we will organize this with you. Otherwise, from my side also, thank you, Lasse, for the presentation today. And see you guys next time. Have a good weekend and enjoy the sun.
Bye-bye.